And in your speech at the Gaza Tribunal, you decided to speak about the Palestinian resistance. Can you tell us more on why did you decide to speak about armed resistance
Absolutely. First
here?
of all, Palestinian resistance is a legacy. It's the legacy of our ancestors. I mean, our ancestors have been resisting in Palestine from the very start. From the orchards of Ya'bad near Jenin, when Izzuddin al-Qassam took a group of men fighting against British colonialism, and every single one of them was killed in that orchard. But eventually, it led to the Palestinian uprising of 1936. And the strike of 1936. And that's particularly interesting. It started with a strike, one of the most comprehensive and effective general strikes ever conducted in the Middle East in that time in history. Talking about 100 years ago. I mean, imagine the political consciousness that the peasants, the fallahin of
Mm.
Palestine had at the time. And that legacy extended generation after generation. Gaza has been the model of resistance. From the very, very beginning, they resisted. And by the way, they resisted without ideology.
Yeah.
They were fallahin, they started these fidaiyin, freedom fighting groups. They just wanted to go home.
Mm.
They just wanted to reclaim their harvest. They were not socialists, they were not Islamists, they were not anything. They were just Palestinian fallahin. And their flag is the Palestinian flag, and their cause is just going back and ending this diaspora. Um, and it's not that they failed. I don't consider that failure. They just evolved.
Mm.
It evolved into another generation of resistors, and a third, and a fourth. And at one point, the resistance that defined Gaza was socialist. They were
Yes.
communists, and my dad was one of them, by the way. And so this is not about Hamas, and it's very, very important that we, create this distinction. You have a lot of people out there saying Hamas does not, kind of disowning Hamas. No, it's not about disowning Hamas or disowning Fatah or disowning anybody. It's about creating a distinction between resistance in Palestinian society and the various political and ideological groups that might be in or outside that realm of resistance. That's what it's all about. This way we diffuse and disarm the false Israeli hasbara and propaganda that makes this fight about Hamas. Hamas started in 1987. The Fidaiyin movement started in the late 1940s. So how do you account for that? When I talk about armed struggle, it has always been a factor. It has
Mm.
always been a factor. But the larger factor has always been popular resistance,
Mm.
meaning the everyday acts of resistance of Palestinians. And you cannot separate them.
Mm.
The moment you separate armed struggle from popular resistance, it's the moment that armed resistance is going to fail entirely and completely. In fact, the Gaza history is extremely relevant in that regard, because at one point the resistance movement in Gaza were very, very secretive and did not always have a connection to the populace. And Israel did manage to take them out one after the other.
Mm.
In fact, I do remember in the Nusayrat refugee camp when the last socialist fighter was caught, the Israeli army brought him to the martyrs' graveyard in the center of Gaza, and they asked him to kind of, reenact
Mm.
what he was about to do to the Israeli army. Pretend that you are throwing the grenade and so forth, and they shot him and they executed him on the spot. And that was it. That was supposedly the end of the armed resistance in Gaza. After that, we went through the process of civil society, civil disobedience, the elections of 1976, I believe, and ultimately to the first Intifada of 1987,
Mm.
which started as popular acts of resistance. And towards the end of it, when the world did not do anything to punish Israel, when no accountability happened, when thousands upon thousands of Palestinian children were killed, wounded, or had their arms broken, and the world did absolutely nothing, only then some semblance of armed resistance started showing up at the end of the Intifada. Second Intifada was more armed
Mm.
than the first one, because they felt, well, we know what happened in the first Intifada when we tried to ask for our rights peacefully, supposedly, and so forth. And so it's an evolution. It's
Mm.
not about Hamas. It's not about Fatah. And this is what I keep emphasizing. Emphasizing it's an evolution. But one thing is for sure, is that Palestinian agency is growing stronger and
Mm.
stronger. I mean, you and I began this conversation talking about taking charge of the narrative. And it is time for us to be at the center. Gaza, in particular, the Gaza intellectual. I'm not being prejudiced against any
Mm.
other Palestinian intellectual, but believe me, you lost, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but you lost your family.
Mm.
You can't tell me that your positionality, as someone who lost many members of his family, and I lost many members of my family, that our positionality is the same of those who did not experience that kind of
Yeah.
loss. Loved people that will never be back. For us, it's very personal.
Yeah.
There's this blood that has been spilled here. This is not about, we cannot reduce our struggle to slangs and chants anymore. It is extremely profound, extremely personal. And this is what makes our story far more relevant and far more central in this struggle. But again, if we are at a stage that we are actually discussing the nuances of how the Palestinian narrative should be conveyed to the rest of the world, I think we are in a very, very good stage in terms of reclaiming the Palestinian agency altogether. And the ones who ultimately reclaimed it are the people of
Yeah.
Gaza.